Hello. Um, I hope you're doing okay. Sorry, it's like I'm talking. So right now I have, um, I'd say some free time, which is nice though because um, in the midst of having time not needed to be participating in active labor um, in our economic system, um, yeah, I've had a lot of stress in it, and this is both probably a combination of my own research um, into our economic system of capitalism um, in relationship with Vietnamese socialism um, and conflicting ideological values and priorities and dominance of Western ideological practice, business practice, workplace practice, um, clashing with my own beliefs and values, which would then consequentially result in my anxiety, my stress, my reactivity to certain framings of language and perspectives that triggered me uncomfortably throughout my time here in Da Nang. Yeah, it was horrible. I was really reactive here. I was like so reactive. I was just like, and I just noticed, I was like, I'm still angry. I was done. I'm done. It's not like I'm acting out on the anger, and I'm trying not to act out on my anger right now because, of course, I just don't feel like it's a useful mechanism like to respond. It's because once we go back to the energetic force of or frequency of the emotion and I absorb it and project or produce it, I am participating in a very toxic cycle. Um, and I don't believe it's going to be a healthy, as I already have suffered years of depression. I still do suffer from depression a lot. Just to about how I am as a human being, as somebody who, through social practice in some form and has attempted to change into a more social person, but also seeing how natural it feels to just simply be in my own world and to not really be a very social person, but also recognizing the limits of that um, position where it might not be so helpful to my well-being if I isolate. So continuing to practice socially, like social and and whatever. So I'm also not holding it up as a regret if I am not participating in a way, but also encouraging myself and often through, pushing myself unfortunately at times to be more social, to um, make sure that I'm not isolating or in the sense I don't really care, but also sending out messages that I don't care, which is it's not that I don't care, um, but it's just I don't know. My brain is weird when it comes to my brain is very weird when it comes to understanding social practices of care, and it looks really horrible. And it's like it might be a consequence of many things. So this is also delving or digging into psychological past history on how past perceptions and causalities and experiences shape your psychological disposition towards acts, right? Where, given what you observed or experienced through interaction with others, constructed um, a normalizing pattern of behavior that responded well to your being of a person. And for me, I just I don't know. It doesn't mean it's worked out for me. Often, how I you know react to social interaction is or observant to others participating in a form of social interaction that I assume to be normal creates or desirable creates like a reactivity of a jealousy, and this is just probably that's also a trauma reaction as well. Anyway, so I have this free time right now, and free whatever free, but I'm in between visas. So in my life right now, I've finished a position. That means I have to legally process an exit visa, which means working through the police to sign contracts, um, provide information, confirmation. Then they process that, and they give me back um, my passport, and then I leave the country again, and then I come back into the country. So I'm also expecting another 3 day holiday in Thailand, which I'm probably not going to really do much because I do this so often. This is the third time or fourth time maybe I've been to Thailand in the past year. My God, me and Thailand are just like this. We're just so close right now. But honestly, when I'm there, I just read books all day. I don't really. I mean, I browse around, see if there's any friends. Um, I'm often very tired all the time in my life, so I'm also so lazy to like go to social events, like because these events are often highly stimulating, highly exhausting. I'm on like alert mode. I don't know why my brain just like looking around the room, um, waiting for somebody to hurt me or something. I don't know why. So it's exhausting. So that leaves me into certain predicaments on how my social interactions are chosen, which also leads to predicaments and outcomes that are undesirable in certain moments. Anyways, so yeah, that's that. And right now I'm just going back. I'm going back to today. Marx. I've been reading. I've been reading the beginning again of Sublime Object of Ideology, and then kind of redirecting back into another book called What Is Sex by Alenka Zupančič or something. I can't remember. I know she's Eastern European woman, and going back into Lacanian psychoanalysis, and of course, like I'm not like genius human, and I've uncovered the depths of Lacanian psychoanalysis and continental philosophy through sheer mass intelligence and capacity that transcends the pitiful um, proletarian or serf or slave like blah 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 comparison blah 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 of I just been using ChatGPT to help uncover knowledge and like provide historical context and to help me uncover more because I'm attracted. I find a lot of attention into Marx and Marxism and class antagonism. So today I've been kind of looking back onto okay, well, what is a social relation in regard to the economic? And at this point, I was learning a bit about commodity fetishism, symptom of, I would say, ideological cynicism with a capital K, um, about historical forms of domination slash suppression in regard to economic exchange, understanding our economic system as a form of bondage, right? So through the shift from feudalistic, I think, direct power of social accidental position of king and serf, bondsman, and blah blah blah. I can't remember all this terminology, but there's there's a dynamic of domination that's occurring here, from feudalism that, um, of course, is extremely toxic, structural, but places laboring individuals into highly vulnerable sites of violence, cruelty, dispossession, precarity, um, and then moving towards capitalism, where, while in some sense the individual or the laborer or the proletariat, and this prior to proletariat, it was understood as through liberalistic or liberal um, tenets proposed through um, the Enlightenment period in Western Europe, that these tenets of liberalism as freedom to act outside of a exploitative or um, repressive or a extractive, in a negative sense, position against a dominant owner was attempted to be established. So just like a sense of freedom, and then was co-opted through capital as of course the freedom to sell your labor. So the free man under capital was then relinquished of freedom by the necessity to sell one's labor to the capitalist being the owner of the means of production, but also the owner of property, so the owner um, of the land itself, of which the laborer is required to survive off of. So all objects of the laborer's existence are in possession of the or are loaned out in some sense from the capitalist or bourgeoisie means owner of production. And so I was just curious as to this social relationship, and also going back to the Hegelian dialectic of slave and master, and that when I was reading Butler, Judith Butler, and the Psychic Life of Power, where Butler then furthermore proposes the psychic consequences of the capitalist economic social interaction or production through the movement of objects that would determine or the social position of the actors in that exchange. So prior to this, we had feudalism, in which actors were directly organized in their social positions, determining their actions, inflexible and by accident to birthright. So the king was king by birth, the serf was serf by birth, the knight or etc. was moved through by birth. It was all a sort of determined by one's accidental location at birth within their social class to reproduce it. Kind of like a soft determinism relative to the caste systems in India. And so, moving from that, I just was spending more time in an investigation about how movement from an indirect, accidental location of birth towards a certain social status, towards capital, whereby all social reality is objectified. So there was a certain subjectification, right? Like we were subjects, accidental by birth, towards a certain social role. And then through capital, all life forms became extracted. So there was a level of fluidity and capacity for bodies to move through fluid social forms. So then there, by birthright, I wasn't necessarily required to fulfill my role as proletariat if I was given the accident of an education and means to learn the procedures or process of a higher social class, I could then allow myself the chance and opportunity through luck and exchange and etc. to become a member of a different social class and improve the social conditions of my life. And so, yeah, that opportunity did come up through capital. It turned all social relations into, I suppose, placeholders. And those placeholders became permeable and not so fixed towards predictable outcomes, which does create an anxiety in some sense. But in the other sense, it doesn't collapse, or it does not interrogate the psychic and the material consequences of being forced back into just certain social relations whereby capitalists are provided and are logically expected in some sense or encouraged to maximize their potential of monetary duplication, production, by any means necessary, by evading taxes, by offshoring, by faulty or investments, doing anything means necessary to make sure that their wealth is allowed opportunity to continually grow as much as exponentially possible, and quietly do so, else people who are living through systems cannot speak up for themselves if so anyway, blah 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 blah. I'm going too far into it. I don't want to explain everything, it's too tiring. Yeah, I'm just going back into this because, like, I don't know. I thought, and this is why partially I quit my job. I was so angry. I was like, I don't know. I'm so disappointed in this world. It's just like, it's so gross. I mean, well, and that's also why there were so many things, but like, I think growing up, of course, I was naive to believe that, people were contributing to a social world. But we kind of, what do? We take for granted, for sure. We know in some sense something's wrong. We like, oh wait, where did that chair come from? Where did this teacher come from? Why is this so cheap? And yet it appears as if it requires, it requires like necessary, social time to, our labor time to produce. If you go to the dollar store, for example, you're like, what is going, and then you're like, wait, that one is really good and that one is really bad, and they're both the same. All these, you're just like, what the fuck is going on? So anyways, we get the contradictions in the ordinary experiences of our lives, of how capital has kind of subsumed all global entities, all global nation states into its own matrix of process of exchange, and yet in the same sense collapsed human dignity by completely flattening everything into its algorithm, regardless of the social consequences of power and hegemony, whatever, blah blah blah, political dominance, and power in itself and its consequences. Blah, blah. So there are these certain things about power that like it takes you a long, or it took me like a long time to be like, well, like what is this power doing? And in some sense you can kind of unpack power. You can unpack it. You can unpack it in a way whereby power, um, if you go by utterance, so in the space of which you occupy, um, of which other bodies occupy. So you're in a space, an intersubjective space in some sense. Um, the one who speaks is the one who's heard, and the one who's heard is the one who knows. Um, anyways, these, but also in the absolute sense that if I am a being of reality, um, who is I may be naive to power. I might assume that, of course, given a social position of authority, say that the subject of authority of knowledge or wisdom in a space is is exists through title. um, I have I am expected to submit to the language of that subject, but there is also a liminal or a middle ground space of, I would say, subconscious conscious processing. So right, you have the conscious knowledge of both, yes, this is information, and it is necessary information, and I also have to fulfill my social role. And then the subconscious would also be, um, oh, but then also the conscious, sorry, would also be like, oh, well, I know I have a capacity to question, and I have a critical stance to be able to reflect that this knowledge is still faulty. It still exists within time and space, and it's its limits. But then also the subconscious is still acting towards absorption and processing. So that's also why when we are learning, that there is a direct input, and then there isn't yet um, an an ability to output in the, like, and but there you could output blah blah blah. All I'm really saying is that it takes time for you to process, right? That's why we say like sleep on it, right? Because we're saying that with time you'll probably catch up to it. So there's a subconscious processing that's occurring. Anyway, so yeah, I guess I'm reading this because what am I reading about this? I guess I don't know. Reality is really weird. Um, and I don't know what I want. And that's why there's this voice in the back of my head where it's like, well, you're kind of doing what you want to do, but I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm not really seeking social recognition because it doesn't feel like it's something that resonates to me. Because, and then also I don't want to desire it either. I don't really desire recognition for itself, and I don't think that's the right way to think about social recognition. Is, in my sense, like, I mean, whatever. But if I do have something to contribute, I just would expect it to contribute itself through me rather than through my consciousness. I'm not going to desire something about my contribution as necessary. Rather, whatever I seem to magnetize or gravitate towards, probably through just whatever happened in my own interests, then it will happen as a collective participant in life. Yeah, but of course, whatever. Yeah, okay, well, thank you, everybody. Bye.